The combination of Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock is cinematic brilliance.
Fans have adored these two since their 1994 smash hit action flick, Speed, because of their unparalleled chemistry. These two became beloved by fans, and Speed became a classic. Fans were swooning over them for reasons beyond just their film role. Their camaraderie outside of the show was the main attraction. This is in large part due to the fact that these two have become known for being approachable, modest, and friendly. Take, for example, any interview with Keanu Reeves. Anyone may fall in love with him since he is so modest. Sandra is no different. So, it was inevitable that many would be ecstatic to hear that these two had once again shattered the internet. Whenever Keanu and Sandra are together, rumors start flying. Either in an interview discussing each other or just in public appearances together. This time, though, they and #039V managed to grab more attention than before. The recent news of their reunion has gone viral, demonstrating the strong bond they share and the excitement of their followers for their reunion.
The next topic for discussion should be their future plans. First, though, let in #039S take a peek at their life and work. Beirut, Lebanon is the site of Keanu Reeves and #039, birth on September 2, 1964. His mother, Patricia Taylor, hailed from the English county of Essex. She did double duty as an actress and costume designer.
Native Hawaiian, Chinese, English, and Portuguese ancestors were all part of Samuel Nolan Reeves Jr. and #039's diverse cultural background. But he was a patriotic American, originally from Hawaii. On the subject of his family, Keanu got off to a rocky start. His mother and #039's job in Beirut was the catalyst for their meeting. They broke up shortly after. His father left the family when Keanu was only 3 years old. And Keanu had and #039 seen him since he was 13 years old. Keanu was a kid whose life was constantly on the go after his parents and #039 1966 divorce. He traveled to multiple nations. Patricia relocated the family to New York after a trip to Sydney, Australia. While in New York, she crossed paths with Paul Aaron, a seasoned director with credits on Broadway and in Hollywood.
In 1970, she wed Paul.
Their subsequent relocation to Toronto, Canada. Sadly, Keanu and #039's mom had a divorce in 1971 from Paul after a short marriage. Even though Paul wasn't an #039 Keanu and #039's biological father anymore, he remained close to him and was always willing to lend a hand. He counseled him and even put him in touch with the Pennsylvania Hedge Row Theater about possible employment. The following year, in 1976, Keanu and #039's mom wed Robert Miller. For a living, Robert promoted concerts. They got a divorce in 1980 because their marriage was short-lived. Keanu was living with his sisters in Toronto and #039's Yorkville district during all this time, and a babysitter was taking care of the kids most of the time. During this period, Keanu became a huge fan of British comedy, particularly The Two Ronnies. As an adult, he continued to practice the English manners and customs instilled in him by his mother. His paternal grandmother was of Chinese descent, thus their culture was also a part of his childhood. He became enamored with cultural diversity due to the abundance of Chinese art, furniture, and cuisine in his life. What we see and love today is a man whose formative years were defined by these events.
We have a better understanding of his background today. But have you ever wished you could have known Keanu and #039's childhood self? While he was younger, he says he was a very shy and reserved child. This truth is confirmed by his high school experience. Among Keanu and #039's 4 educational stops was the Etobicoke School of the Arts, from which he was expelled. Regarding the reason for his expulsion, Keanu claims he was not involved in any significant event. He spoke his mind a bit too much and was a bit too wild. Because of this, he frequently spoke before his turn. Reading was already challenging for him as a child due to his dyslexia. As a result, his academic performance was lacking. Keanu ISN and #039 bashful about discussing his scholastic challenges or admitting that he wasn't and #039 the brightest student in school, but he ISN and #039 too bashful about highlighting his own abilities either. In sports, Keanu achieved great success. He was a standout goalie on the ice hockey team at De La Salle College. He was so talented that he aspired to play for the Canadian Olympic team and was even considered a prospect by the Ontario Hockey League, OHL. Regrettably, he had to put hockey on hold after suffering a major injury. His interests began to gravitate toward acting when he was 15 years old. He was able to keep up with his studies and pursue performing possibilities at Avondale Secondary Alternative School after graduating from De La Salle College. Keanu, however, made a giant jump when he left school at the age of 17 to devote himself entirely to his acting profession. After gaining a green card through his American stepfather, he took another leap of faith when he relocated to Los Angeles at the age of 20. Despite spending his formative years in Canada, he became a Hollywood superstar after relocating to the United States. Keanu started his career in 1984 as a reporter for Going Great, a youth show on CBC that was produced by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. His acting debut was in the TV series Hanging In, which aired around the same period. He began performing in theater productions in 1985, playing Mercutio in a Romeo and Juliet adaptation. He went on to play Wolf Boy and other parts in various productions. In 1983, Keanu was not only in a short film called One Step Away, but he was also the face of a Coca-Cola ad. Around the middle of the 1980s, Keanu and #039's agency began to recommend that he choose a stage name that was less ethnic. He decided to go by KC, which is pronounced Casey. However, he quickly came to the realization that he was not fond of this new name. He went back to using his given name after some time. Television films such as Brotherhood of Justice and Babes in Toyland were the next stops for Reeves. He made his film debut in Youngblood, playing the part of a goalie. Given that he had experience in goalkeeping during his youth, this surely held a special place in his heart. After that, Keanu was much praised for his empathetic portrayal in the crime drama River and #039's Edge, in which he starred. Reeves had a string of teen drama roles in the late and #039's, including Permanent Record, The Prince of Pennsylvania, and The Night Before. Keanu Reeves and #039's performance in Permanent Record was well received despite the film and #039's lack of commercial success and critical consensus. Dangerous Liaisons, which won numerous Oscars, cast him in a supporting role, which he was able to secure. Keanu finally got the break he had been waiting for in 1989. When it came out, it was the hilarious comedy Bill and Ted and #039's Excellent Adventure, which made over $40 million. The film and #039's success was due in large part to Reeves and #039's performance as a charming and lovable idiot. He then went on to star in the critically acclaimed comedy drama Parenthood, where he maintained his comedic persona. In 1990, Reeves kept acting, appearing in Tune In Tomorrow as a radio station employee and I Love You to Death as a clumsy hitman. He also appeared in Paula Abdul and #039's Rush Rush music video, playing a role similar to James Dean and #039's, beginning with 1991 and #039's Bill and Ted and #039's Bogus Journey. Keanu Reeves began to cast himself in parts that reflected his growing maturity. The sequel was well received by audiences for its originality and Keanu and #039's stellar performance. He co-starred with River Phoenix in the critically acclaimed film My Own Private Idaho later that year. The play by Shakespeare served as the basis for this film. Playing an FBI agent who pursues a gang of bank robbers in the film Point Break, which was released that same year, was Reeves and #039's second big break. With over $83 million in ticket sales, the picture was a financial triumph. The critics were unanimous in their admiration of Reeves, praising his versatility and the way he expertly navigated both comedic and dramatic roles. It wasn't in #039's movies that caught Keanu and #039's eye. He was interested in expanding his musical horizons. A band he formed, Dog Star, was the result. That he has played bass guitar in the past. After that, in 1992, he portrayed Jonathan Harker in the film Dracula. Despite the film and #039's success, Keanu received some criticism for his English accent. Despite this, the film managed to win a number of accolades. His career didn't end. #039's
really take off though, until 1994.
Speed, an action thriller, is solely responsible,
in which he portrayed a police officer who was attempting to stop the bomb from going off on a bus. Together with his close friend Sandra Bullock, he worked on this. The picture was so successful that it took home more than $350 million and took home 2 Oscars. He began to see fluctuations in his career around 1995.
Johnny Mnemonic was a 1995 film in which he appeared. Critics were generally unimpressed with this film.
A Cloud Walk was another one of his accomplishments that year, on which opinions were divided.
The film in question was a love drama. Reeves transitioned to the stage for a brief stint, playing Hamlet.
He was in 2 critically acclaimed but commercially unsuccessful films in 1996. Due to the continuing animosity between him and the production company, he declined 20th Century Fox and #039's offer to star in Speed 2. Rather, he began to center his attention on his band. He starred in a drama in 1997, The Year I Committed Suicide, after that whole thing had gone on for a while. The Devil and #039's Advocate was another film he appeared in that year. His 1999 film was widely considered to be among the all-time greats.
Indeed, you were correct.
In this context, end quote, The Matrix, end quote, refers to the seminal science fiction film that has stood the test of time. Even though it came released over 20 years ago, this movie is still making waves with its memes.
Keanu became an international superstar after the picture won 4 Oscars. Keanu has had enough.
Now, let in #039's shift our focus to Sandra. Arlington County, Virginia is the place where Sandra Bullock came into this world on July 26, 1964. Helga Matilda Meyer and #039's mother was a gifted opera singer and voice teacher from Germany. Her dad, John Wilson Bullock, was a vocal teacher and Army employee, though he only did it on the side.
Birmingham, Alabama was John and #039's hometown.
An intriguing love story unfolded between Sandra and #039's parents. While Sandra and #039's dad was serving as the military mail service for the army in Europe, it all began in Nuremberg, Germany.
They eventually got married in Germany after meeting her mother there.
A rocket scientist from Nuremberg was Sandra and #039's maternal grandfather. Sandra and her father returned to Arlington, Virginia, after their marriage in Germany, to take up a position with the Army Materiel Command. A contractor with the Pentagon was his subsequent occupation. Gayson Bullock Prado is Sandra and #039's younger sister. Gayson rose up the ranks and eventually became president of Sandra and #039's production firm, Fortis Films. Despite Sandra and #039's American birth, she spent the majority of her childhood in Europe. She resided in the West German city of Nuremberg for 12 years. She was also a resident of Salzburg and Vienna, Austria. She owes most of her formative years, including her formal education, to her experiences in Europe.
In Nuremberg, Sandra attended the Waldorf School.
She spent that period immersed in German culture and language, which she eventually mastered. Her mother was an opera singer who traveled extensively over Europe when she was a child. Because of this, Sandra, when she was a little girl, spent a lot of time with her cousin Suzanne and Aunt Crystal.
Suzanne wed Peter Ramsauer, a politician, in the end.
Even though she spent a lot of time in Europe, she never lost touch with her American heritage. To pay homage to her ancestry, she sought for German citizenship in 2009 while maintaining her American citizenship. While stationed in the United States, Bullock attended Arlington and #039's Washington Lee High School. Her background as a cheerleader is obvious.
She was also quite involved in the theater.
Sandra followed her heart and pursued a career in theater after finishing high school in 1982.
Went to Greenville, North Carolina, to enroll at East Carolina University.
While at East Carolina, she was a member of the theater company that performed in shows including Three Sisters and Peter Pan. Sandra received her Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in drama in 1987. She was hell-bent on making it big in Hollywood as an actress. She uprooted her life and headed to Manhattan after finishing college. She had to work odd jobs to make ends meet, as is typical of many would-be performers. While trying out for parts in the film industry, I worked odd jobs like as a cocktail server, bartender, and coat checker. Sandra became the accomplished actor she is today as a result of this time of tender struggle.
We need to discuss the on-screen meeting of these two.
During the early days of filming, Keanu was and #039, the leading man. The lead part was originally supposed to go to actor Jeff Speakman. Paramount Pictures was in the middle of this. Speakman, however, was no longer involved with the picture after it was sold to 20th Century Fox.
We kept looking for the leading man.
The part of Jack Traven was first given to Stephen Baldwin, but he turned it down. The character reminded him too much of John McClane from Die Hard, 1988, which is why he rejected it.
And he desired an alternative.
The same thing happened to actor Richard Grieco, who turned on an opportunity he subsequently regretted. The part was ultimately passed over in favor of one of several other A-listers, including Tom Hanks, Woody Harrelson, Wesley Snipes, and Tom Cruise.
At long last, Keanu caught the attention of filmmaker Jan de Bont. His act in Point Break left a huge impression on him.
The ideal way to define Keanu Reeves and #039, portrayal of Jack Traven, says Jan, is that he possessed the ideal blend of vulnerability and strength.
When Reeves saw an opportunity, he jumped on it.
In order to embody this figure, he underwent rigorous physical training, which included shaving his head. The choice to shave the head caused some concern in the studio, but it was ultimately successful because Reeves embodied the role with the necessary intensity.
In the end, Sandra Bullock would portray the major female role of Annie.
But there were a lot of tweaks made to it while it was in development. In the original script, Annie and #039's ability to drive the bus in the film and #039's high-pressure scenario was explained by her background as an African-American paramedic. Halle Berry turned down the part, a decision she would come to deeply regret. After giving the character more depth, the development team decided she would be perfect as a humorous sidekick. Therefore, Ellen DeGeneres became the new front-runner. This time around, the character progressed toward being Jack Traven and #039's romantic interest.
It was Sandra Bullock who was cast in the role.
They tried her out with Keanu Reeves to see how they would work together, and how their chemistry would play out in action sequences.
Ultimately, it was the right call. Their chemistry while acting was fantastic. We are now in the present day. Once again, these two have disrupted the internet. However, this time around, what exactly did they do? We can discuss that.
They became an iconic on-screen duo and laid the groundwork for a real-life friendship when they initially joined up in 1994 for Speed. The two of them had such great chemistry and speed that they reteamed for a sequel 3 years later.
Quick 2.
Even though Cruise Control wasn't and #039 as popular as Speed, it didn't and #039 break their relationship. In the film The Lake House, they reunited after a 10-year separation.
The film debuted in 2006 and was a love drama.
Their collaboration was seen in a different light in that film.
Their desire to collaborate remained strong even as their careers progressed and the years passed.
They recently discussed their interest in reuniting for a future project, particularly the third installment of the Speed franchise. Their appearance on an edition of the 50 Miles Per Hour podcast, a show that delves into the making of Speed, showed how enthusiastic they were about the notion. The enthusiasm Sandra exuded shone through as she enthusiastically responded to show host Chris Tapley and #039's query regarding the likelihood of Speed 3.
End quote. I want to work on another project with Kenny before I die, before I leave this planet, end quote, she remarked.
She jokingly mentioned that they might require wheelchairs or walkers on set when they get older, but she is still up for the challenge. The prospect of working with Sandra on a third Speed picture was just as exciting to Keanu. He mentioned to Sandra that he felt compelled to come back and do another Speed move, and that it would be amazing to work with her again. He remarked, end quote, if they do it again, freaking knock it out of the park, end quote, in his ecstatic excitement, but he insisted it had nothing to do with the Fast film. They were more concerned with the happiness that would come from reuniting as a team than with the prospect of completing another action thriller.
There is no doubt that their personal and professional bond is still very much alive and well.
Sandra went on to explain that the Speed films held great significance for her, not just because of the fun she experienced while filming, but also because of the lasting impression they left behind.
Is it possible that we might see these two reunited? The likelihood is high, I think. It is something that they are both interested in doing.
All that remains is for them to star in a film together. Thanks for watching today and hashtag 039's video. Please come back for the next one, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. Please share with us your favorite Keanu Reeves and Sandra film before you depart.